Hello everyone. In this video, a little story about my patience. Finally, I caught the mood for knitting combs. I have always been intimidated by the number of scales on the comb that need to be knitted. Because I will tell you, knitting them requires a lot of patience, but a surprise awaited me here. It didn't all work out right away, therefore, more patience was needed than I had planned. The first comb turned out to be not a cone at all. I wanted to put down the hook and yarn and forget about cones until next year. But I decided not to give up. For the second comb, I elongated the base and knitted the scales in such a way that they wouldn't stick to each other. But still, something was off. Finally, the third comb turned out just like a real one. So if you have the time and patience for cones, grab your yarn, hook, and let's knit together. Until the new year. There is not much time left, but by knitting one cone a day, you can make enough for a whole tree. I will indicate the name of the yarn in the description. We make a ring, and cast on 6 stitches of the ring. In the second row, we double the stitches. We knit 2 for each stitch, resulting in 12 stitches. In the third row, 2 stitches and an increase will be repeated 4 times, resulting in 16 stitches. Next, we will knit all rows only through the back loops. Fourth row, 2 stitches and an increase. Repeat 5 times. At the end of the row, you will need to finish with 1 stitch. There will be 21 stitches. Fifth row, repeat 2 stitches and an increase, 7 times. At the end of this row, which is the current row you are working on, there will be a total of 28 stitches in place. The next 2 rows, specifically rows 6 and 7, are to be knitted without any changes or modifications, maintaining 28 stitches in each of these rows. In the 8th row, you will have 2 stitches initially, followed by a decrease, which means reducing the number of stitches by 1. Repeat 7 times. At the end of this row, there will be 21 stitches. Rows 9 and 10 are knitted without changes, with 21 stitches each. In the 11th row of your knitting project, you will begin by knitting 2 stitches. Following this, you will perform a decrease, which involves knitting 2 stitches together, a total of 5 times. This means you will reduce the number of stitches on your needle by 5. As you approach the end of this row, you will notice that there is only 1 stitch remaining to be knitted. At this point, you should knit this single stitch to complete the row. This process is crucial for shaping your knitting piece correctly, ensuring that the pattern is followed accurately, and the final product turns out as expected. Remember, the decrease technique is essential for creating the desired shape and fit in your knitting project. So take your time to execute each step carefully. At the end of the row, there will be 16 stitches. Row 12. Knit 16 stitches without any changes. Row 13. 2 stitches and a decrease. Repeat 4 times. At the end of the row, there will be 12 stitches. Row 14. 2 stitches and a decrease. Repeat 3 times. There will be 9 stitches. Now we insert the filler. Row 15, knit 1 column and a decrease. Repeat 3 times. This will result in 6 columns. In row 16, we will make only 1 decrease. Do not cut the thread. We immediately proceed to knitting the scales. We will knit the scales from the bottom up. Therefore, we knit the last row only through the back half loops. Next, we move on to the half loops that remained in the knitting process. We cast on 2 chain stitches. Next, we knit into the first column through the back half loop, or into the 3rd stitch from the hook. We make a column with a yarn over, but do not complete it. In the next stitch, we also make a double crochet. Not all the way through. Now we have 3 stitches on the hook. We crochet them together. Next, we chain 2 stitches and make a slip stitch into the stitch where we made the previous double crochet. and so the first scale was created. Next, in the following stitch, we make a slip stitch. Make 2 chain stitches. And into the same stitch, we crochet a double crochet knot to the end. In the next stitch, we crochet a double crochet, but not all the way through. We crochet together 3 stitches from the hook. Then chain 2 chain stitches, and make a slip stitch into the same stitch, where we made the double crochet, resulting in the second scale. We continue crocheting, making 3 more scales, close together, meaning not skipping any stitches between the scales. In total, there should be 5 scales crocheted together. After crocheting 5 scales, skip 1 stitch. Work a slip stitch. We knit 2 chain stitches, then a double crochet knot fully into the same stitch. In the next stitch, we also do a double crochet knot fully, and then we work 3 stitches together. Next, we make 2 chain stitches and a slip stitch into the same stitch where we did the double crochet. Then, we continue to knit all the scales, skipping 1 stitch between the scales. During the knitting process, make sure that the scales are not stacked on top of each other. As soon as you notice that the scales are positioned on top of each other, simply work 2 scales together without skipping a stitch between them, and then the scales will shift slightly, and will be positioned one above the other in each row. So, let's be patient, and knit the scales to the end. Now I am finishing the last scale. I have 1 stitch left, so I will do 2 double crochets into this stitch. Thus, we finish with a slip stitch. Now, we need to make a loop. I do not cut the yarn, but simply work 2 slip stitches between the rows, meaning I reach the first row. Now I will chain 35 chain stitches. Carefully, gently, and precisely, we knit 2 chain stitches, then a double crochet knot fully into the same stitch. In the next stitch, we also do a double crochet knot fully, and then we work 3 stitches together. Next, we make 2 chain stitches and a slip stitch into the same stitch where we did the double crochet. Then, we continue to knit all the scales, skipping 1 stitch between the scales. During the knitting process, make sure that the scales are not stacked on top of each other. As soon as you notice that the scales are positioned on top of each other, simply work 2 scales together without skipping a stitch between them, and then the scales will shift slightly and will be positioned one above the other in each row. So, let's be patient and knit the scales to the end. Now I am finishing the last scale. I have 1 stitch left, so I will do 2 double crochets into this stitch. Thus, we finish with a slip stitch. Now we need to make a loop. I do not cut the yarn but simply work 2 slip stitches between the rows, meaning I reach the first row. Now I will chain 35 chain stitches. I cut the thread, tighten the last loop, then use a needle to make a loop. I attach the ends of the chain so they're on top of each other, opposite each other. Then, with a couple of stitches, I connect the chain at the base. I hide the thread inside and cut it off. I straighten the scales and the cone is ready. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and find it useful. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell, share with friends, and take care. Bye.